Thank you very much. So for this next section, it's going to be an interactive session where we're going to talk about what is important to do to prep for BI 2025. So we will have different speakers. We've got Nathan Truhan from Protiviti. We have Patrick Neesmith as well from Protiviti that will be there. So they support a lot of migration projects. We've been working with them for many, many years. We also have Keith Johnson as well, with whom also we've been working for, I think, over 10 years, and who's the CTO of CB on Data. And then, of course, we've got Jeff Caron, who's with Wiiisdom and who's done also tens and tens and tens of migrations over the 20 plus years of experience. Nathan, I'll probably pass it over to you. And by the way, if you have some questions for the audience, please feel free to ask some questions. Nathan, what is critical in order to prepare for BI 2025? So by the way, I will stop sharing my screen. It's probably better that we all go in a, camera on mode from the organization side. So, Nathan, what can you tell us about what's important for BI 2025?
For BI2025, like Gregory was talking earlier, some of the big things to look out for is making sure your environment is in a state to get ready to migrate. So the biggest things like what content are you using? How much content is there? What kind of, are you still using UNX, UNVs, getting that migrated over to UNXs, the Crystal Enterprise, all your infrastructure behind the scenes, getting rid of deprecated products, looking at your sizing of your environment, even though we are deprecating and replacing some of the products in the environment, we do have to look at especially coming from earlier versions we saw a lot of people 42% still on 4.2, coming up from a mixed 30-64-bit platform to a full 64-bit and 4.3, even up in the BI 2025, making sure the resources are there in your systems for that, and getting everything ready in that aspect.
Nathan, and to the rest of the audience, actually, I saw a question earlier, and it's a good point, actually. For customers that are still in 4.2, will there be a path to go directly to BI 2025? So will they need to go to 4.3 to 4.3, or can they go directly to BI 2025?
It's recommended, depending on what version they're coming from, but it's recommended to go to 4.3 first, and then you can upgrade directly from 4.3 in place upgrade to 2025. But it's recommended to go to a 4.3 because a lot of times, especially customers still on 4.2 have been on 4.2 for a long time. So you're going to want to at least do a side-by-side upgrade and get everything replatformed as well. So yeah, you'll want to upgrade to 4.3 in between, but you'll be able to do an in-place upgrade from 4.3 to 2025. So your end will be 2025. So the end users will never see 4.3 in the process, but you'll be going straight using that as an intermediate jump point because there is. Go ahead.
Yeah. Also, I'll add that another thing you got to take into consideration is risk. BI or Business Objects 4.2 is going to be end of life at the end of the year. It's not going to be supported. And I think I heard Greg say that 2025 is going to be GA at the end of Q1 next year. And obviously most clients like to wait, a dot release before they upgrade. So there is some time there where you could potentially be out of support between, a 4.2 and a 2025. So yeah, that's another reason for going ahead to 4.3 now in preparation for 2025.
Yes. Just wanted to point out that it is not technically necessary. I mean, it's a good recommendation, don't get me wrong, but it will be possible to do a direct migration, especially if you have a small, simple environment. I mean, that mitigates the risk, of course, but
Yeah, the biggest thing is depending on, because the on 4.2, the PAM, if your OS is an older, Windows 2012 or so, that may not necessarily be supported on
right.
2025. So that would require changeovers to new. But yeah, the content migration will be able to go straight to BI 2025, but your actual upgrade, like an upgrade to in place, you wouldn't be able to upgrade in place from 4.2 to BI 2025 direct.
Agreed, agreed. I'm thinking about side-by-side migration,
Oh yeah,
which
side by
which
side, yeah.
would be, yeah, exactly. That would be our recommendation anyway. I mean, you will be upgrade. I mean, cleaning up your content, right? I mean, you mentioned that when you start, you want to make sure what's used, what is not, and if you have all the proper formats. But it's also the right time to revisit your operating system, your environment, go to the cloud, whatever the case may be. It's a perfect opportunity, and that's why when I was a business object consultant, that always pushed for side by side instead of in place. Plus, it's easier to recover.
Definitely. KJ, do you have any recommendations to go to BI 2025? Um, how would you do that? I mean, right now, I know you're working
Carefully.
on multiple projects, so go ahead.
I said carefully. I don't know, every major release, and I totally agree with it. What you guys are saying is, um, I always like to be on the bleeding edge, but always wait for at least 2 to 3, but usually 4 patches on any new major release, patch or full release, right? To just work out the kinks before migrating a customer into production on that new platform, right? That doesn't mean we don't have a sandbox in place that we're kind of kicking the tires on all the new features and functionality prior to that. But yeah, to me, there's always a little bit of lag on when that drops, when that new patch or full patch or new full version releases, and the actual migration timeline, right? Um, you always want to kind of take your time to make sure that you try to iron out as many of the migration issues, that you can. That's just after years of black and blue. That's kind of what we've learned over the while.
That's I think if somebody disagrees with that, just let us know. But I think this is this is a very that's a very good advice, just to wait a little bit. Don't be the first one. I think some of the issue, KJ, there is sometimes you've got some organization because you got some CVs, let's say they're CVs that you've recognized that were, let's say, level 8 as an example, or 7 and above, which is typically from the time you need to upgrade. In that case, when these happen, you're actually forced to go to something that's newer, and sometimes it brings more problems. You agree with that?
That's why we're in this business, right? We enjoy the opportunities it holds.
One comment I wanted to do as well is, okay, so with BI 2025, of course you won't have Crystal Report Enterprise anymore. You will have Crystal Report, or meaning Crystal Report Classic, and you'll have Webby. I had multiple discussions with some customers, and some of them actually have told me, Bruno, like, what was it, 2 years ago? I can't remember, when they had the Log4j, everybody suddenly had to, everybody just within a week, 2 weeks, whatever, was forced to upgrade.
Yep.
And we've actually seen some customers right now that are getting ready for BI 2025, because one of their fear was, if there is like a Log4j that happens again, they will not be able to go to BI 2025 if they're forced to go, because they have not converted and they have not reported yet um, their Webby universes and Webby documents. So that's something really, I thought that was pretty interesting. And that is something definitely to think about, because if it happens tomorrow, it's a project that will not happen overnight. Any thoughts on that? KJ, Nathan?
I agree. I mean, you would actually find yourself completely cornered if you don't start thinking about it and probably acting on it right now. I mean, you need to be ready. I agree with you, Bruno, 100%.
Yeah.
And in terms of consultants, so today, Nathan, KJ, so today you work for two different consulting firms with whom we've been working for a long time. So what are you recommending your customers to be BI 2025 ready? So what are you doing today with these customers that you have, under contract?
That is a
Well,
great question. I mean, I think for the majority of our customers, we're looking at getting them onto, or making sure that they're either on, the latest 4.3 patch 3 or patch 4, just to get them kind of queued up into that space. And also starting to figure out what's that timeline look for next year, right? None of our customers move at the speed of light. They always we need to start to schedule that at least into the calendar of next year to say, hey, we are going to have to do an upgrade next year. So let's make sure that, we've got budget for this, we've got time for this, and we've got it kind of in the roadmap for them. So this doesn't, we don't wait to the last minute and all of a sudden say, oh, hey, guess what? 2 months out, we need to do a major upgrade that's going to, cover a couple of months worth of time, and have its own unique challenges. So trying to get that roadmap in place now will hopefully make it a little bit easier in terms of getting that started next year.
Yeah, working with them along with that, what KJ was saying, but also when they're saying, got to look ahead as well as what it's going to take to get them to BI 2025 and what that timeline is going to look like, as well as, okay, let's look at a roadmap for cleanup for your environment. Let's look at a roadmap of what your new environment will look like in terms of servers and stuff like that. Let's do a sizing now. What your environment's, just a high level sizing, what your environment's going to look like now, to say, hey, next, when you're getting ready for this for your budget, are we going to start looking at the cloud? Are we going to keep you on premise? How does this going to look? So that way you can start adding that into your cost for next year. If you have to look at reallocating servers, new virtualization, if you're going to go CapEx into the cloud, and start allocating that stuff ahead of time as well. And then we could start looking at virtualization and things like that, having those discussions ahead of time, and then what's required for that, as well as planning for the BI upgrade as well.
What I found particularly troubling from the polls is that about half the customers have not completely converted to UMX. Now, granted, they don't say how many UNVs they still have. I mean, they could be a few, stragglers. We don't know that, but still, that's an important step, especially if you consider the repointing. If they have to do it manually, which of course we recommend against, but.
Yeah, you've got a good point, but I have to say, comparing to a couple years ago, okay, there are still a lot of customers, yes, that are still in UNV and are in 4.2, but actually, because of Log4j in the past, if we would have done the same event like 3 years ago, I bet you that there would have been customers that would be 4 versions, not service packs, 4 versions of BobJ behind. So I think the fact there, at least the positive side is, yes, there are still people in 4.2, but it's not as bad as what used to be. And, it could be that people have got a 4.2 that's stable. They'll convert from 4.2 to BI 2025. I think one good advice there is make sure that you're at least in 4.2 SP7 to use the Fury mode, because that definitely is, you've got the dual mode in 4.2, not in 4.3, and that is something that will take some time.
Yeah, but that brings us back to the risk of an external reason for upgrading that would not be planned. So there's definitely a risk there.
And I think some of that also came back to, when UNXs were first introduced in early 4.0, we always had the thing, SAPs, here's UNXs, UNVs will be deprecated soon. UNVs, and they weren't, and they never were. And so everybody just kind of fell and say, okay, well, they'll always be around now. So nobody ever went through a conversion process. Everybody just settled it on UNVs and everything. And now they are. So they finally came through with their word of deprecating them. And now, here we are, and everybody still has their platform. And now we need to work with customers to get them converted.
That sounds eerily similar to the story of Desky.
Yeah.
Right.
Which was still wound up going through all the way into 4.2.
But eventually they had to.
And Nathan, you were talking about assessments. So is this something that you're doing today with customers? Same for you, KJ, where in terms of prepping for BI 2025, you're offering some assessments today to look at how large your platform is and the usage. Is this something that you do today?
Yeah.
And is this a service that you offer and then you do recommendations on that, or what do you guys do?
It is. It depends on how much detail. I mean, we have different offerings for it, but yes, there's different levels of offerings we have for it. Yes.
Patrick, you've got some comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Yeah, certainly it's, we can do an assessment. Typically it's about a day to look at your environment. We leverage the Wiiisdom tools, and we'll give you recommendations on if you need to upgrade, what to clean up, things that, could be moved over to, say, Analytics Cloud or something like that. And then, of course, recommendations on your UNV to UNX, all the things you need to do to get ready for 2025 and to get up on a supported platform if you're not. Another thing I typically recommend with our clients and what we're seeing a need for, because a lot of customers of business objects are losing their business objects admin expertise, either over attrition or those people kind of being pulled into doing other tasks. So certainly, managed services from a company like ours or other partners, is a good way to make sure that, you are, up on the latest version all the time and prepared, for whatever comes next, in this case, 2025. Because that's the type of thing that we do, is making sure that you're on the latest patches and you're getting your things like your UNVs to UNXs converted and things like that in preparation for any upcoming upgrades.
Well, as well, what we see, there is actually a lot of customers that use actually managed services, whether it's from you or from CB on data, for example, or other partners going to the cloud.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, today, in terms of cloud, essentially, you've got, there are like three options, essentially. One is you can leverage SAP with PC. It uses the same code, where SAP will manage all the updates, but there will be no testing. And I think it's fair to say that you will have a very limited access to BobJ functionalities behind the scene. What we have seen that is really becoming very popular is a lot of customers now, have been or are going actually to hyperscalers like AWS or Google Cloud or Azure. And we've actually seen some customers, that are using some of these managed services. Like in terms of the offering, what do you do? What is different with PC on KJ, Nathan, Patrick? So what is the difference with your managed services when you do that on the cloud?
So our managed services, so excluding PCE, our managed services, whether you're on premise or in the cloud, are basically the same. We do typically recommend that clients, as part of whatever upgrade they're doing at the time, go ahead and move to the cloud. I mean, every client has a cloud initiative. They're all moving other applications to the cloud, and so it's a good time to consider doing that. PCE is a little bit different animal because some of the services are provided by SAP, and typically we see it's customers with larger deployments or who are going to RISE with S4 HANA that are maybe going to PCE. For the most part, others are kind of doing their own kind of a bring your own license on one of the hyperscalers, and then leveraging a company like us to help manage that.
KJ?
Yeah, I was going to say that just the one thing just to bring up in terms of PCE is it's not that for most of us that manage BobJ environments or just because you move it into PCE does not mean that you're kind of off the hook for continuing to manage your environment, or planning future upgrades and testing. PCE really handles the underlying hardware or virtual environments, but that doesn't cover the day-to-day kind of administration, troubleshooting, upgrade path, all of the I would call that core business objects administration kind of components. So just kind of be aware of that, right? They make sure the car is running and it's operational, but you're still the driver, as it were, within those environments, right? You've got to be looking at, what's the next service pack or patch you need to deploy? How are you going to integrate that into your existing environments in terms of security? All those components you still need to take care of.
That's a great point, and that's something that, like with managed services, that we certainly help our clients with. Is we have monthly meetings to review where they are, what are upcoming patches or upgrades, things like that, and help them plan for that. And that, I agree, that's something you're not going to get on PCE without a partner.
And looks like they're like all the, based on what you're saying, all the testing, a lot of the things that you're doing today you will still need to do in the future if you go on PC on that. So essentially they'll just handle all the upgrades. And one question, I've seen as well is if you got lots of custom application, how does that work when you go to PC? Isn't that complicated to handle? So how do you do that? Because
very complicated, yes. and honestly, that's
with an honest answer.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of our clients do have custom integrations. They use business objects as the way to provide reporting out to their customers, maybe through a web portal or something like that. So yes, so it's definitely easier to do that when you have access to the OS level and things like that, which you don't have with PC. So it's not that it can't be done, it's that it's much more time consuming and a lot more interaction with SAP on that.
You have to basically still have to manage your own server, either on your own on-premise or your own cloud, to host your code there, your own web portal or wherever your SDK code is going to be sitting. That will then point to the actual PCE environment versus being able to host the code there. And it is a little easier now than it was back when PCE was just Linux. Now that it is Windows, some of the integration points are a little easier than it was, but it's still can be a little complicated because of not being able to do, like Patrick was saying, not having access to the OS level to be able to do some of the configuration stuff there.
And on PC, do you still need an admin? Do you still need to manage the security of the users, what they have access
Yeah.
to, the
It's
scheduling?
basically it's software as a service. So basically anything, if you think of them from a cloud perspective, you've got from cloud delivery where like VM levels, anything hardware level down below a VM is like AWS or Microsoft, Amazon or Microsoft or Oracle's uh, they handle it where you would handle the VM, the OS, and everything. This basically takes it up one level to where SAP now handles everything from the patching and configuration, everything down. They basically turn over the CMC launchpad to you and admin tools. Basically, say, okay, you take it from here. They give you an administrator account, which is different from the actual administrator. They give you a different named user account that has administrator rights, and then you manage the CMC, you manage your contents, your universes, reports, everything else gets imported just like you would manage it on site. But at that point, it takes off from you there.
Okay. And it reminds me of something where I've actually visited a customer not that long ago where they have upgraded to a version that was not that stable of Bob Day and that had really huge performance issues.
Mhm.
And they were forced to roll back. So if you were on PCE, how would you handle that? Because is it when they're doing an upgrade, is it a side by side or is it an in place? Because I know SAP recommends an in place, and we've always been very clear where we want our customers to do side by side because we feel it's a lot safer. So how would that happen?
A
So,
lot of, go ahead.
so it's kind of funny you bring up that particular topic because we've had to do that.
Ah,
Mhm.
We've gone through that process. So yeah, there is not a side by side kind of option. Um, we've actually had to roll back sometimes a patch or two in terms of that, which can be handled in the cloud. I mean, it's not any different, but you'd work with your PCE team to go back through that, and then after you've rolled it back, is you've got to validate that the environment is where it needs to be. Making sure content, users access, all of that. And then even in a worst case scenario, they've got the capability that if they need to roll back at a VM level, right, or at a system level, an AMI level in the cloud, they've got that capability to do too. Now, knock on wood, we haven't ever hit a scenario like that, but you do have some flexibility in terms of rolling back.
but there, everything you've worked on is lost, essentially, if you have to roll back like that.
Well, so all your content is still stored on a separate device, right? So it's usually on a shared disk. So your content isn't lost, right? It's just the Bob J version is getting rolled back itself.
Okay.
Jeff, any comments on that?
More of a question. I mean, do you get? I mean, is there any planning when an upgrade happens, or does it happen independently of you?
There's planning. They
Okay.
work with you. You've got a support person, a dedicated team that works with you on planning, when that's going to happen, the downtime on that, and ensuring that it happens off hours, stuff like that. Making sure that snapshots are taken, the databases, the file systems, the OSs, and those patches are done appropriately and then tested.
And a subject that we touched on when talking about being ready for 2025, but it applies also probably even more when going to the cloud is sizing and therefore cleanup. Extra content costs a lot more when you go in that direction. So I think that should be something you should look at pretty closely, right, before moving to such an environment.
I mean, yeah, Jeff, you got a good point because what I hear from customers is actually storage is not cheap on the cloud, and it's not cheap as well on PCE. So yeah, definitely cleanup is something that's really important. Before you go or once you're there, you need to have some automation behind the scene to do archiving and to do cleanup as well. And this is, of course, something that 360 will do extremely well. As well, the rollback, if you got some issues as well, you can actually roll back to previous version and it's incremental. KJ, Nathan, any comments on that?
No, we use Wiiisdom in all of our deployed environments, whether PCE or on-prem, just for that particular reason, being able to roll back or get back a version, there's no question, especially eyes too for the auditing kind of components. That's a huge benefit.
And is that doing okay for these environments, KJ?
Yeah, we haven't run into any major issues. Within PCE, it adds a little bit of complexity. We talked about previously where we host the Wiiisdom tools along with some other in our own VPCs that kind of sit side by side with the PCE environment and manage it all. We've opened the necessary rules to allow that to talk to Bob J. But it works fairly well. We haven't run into any major issues.
And this is for federal customers, like, regulated customers.
It is. Yep. We're on GovCloud for those customers.
Nathan, comments on that?
Well, same type of thing. We've set up. We don't host it ourselves for customers like that, but we will set it up for customers. They host it in their environment, and then same type of thing. They'll set up the VPCs and the connections for them to connect it into the PCE environment, configure it. But yeah, we try to use it as much as possible when we can for any of our engagements, and once we're in there to make sure it's set up for cleanup beforehand as much as possible before the data goes up there, and then of course once it's up there to maintain it.
Hey, I've got a couple questions from the audience. So I see one question, curious on folks, what are you seeing with 4.3 customers? What service pack and patch versions are customers happy with? So that's the $1 million question. So Nathan, KJ, JF, what do you see in terms of stable versions? What's the most stable? And no bullshit, because these are really, I want to make sure, and I think we've all given fair answers, but these are really critical answers for customers. So
we've been sitting on patch or 4.3 patch or 4.3 Service Pack 3 patch 6 for one of our major federal customers, probably for the last 8 months with pretty good results. But now we're starting to kick the tires on Service Pack 4 with them, patch 4, to see about upgrading in the next couple months. So that's what we've been seeing.
Nathan?
Yeah. Most of our customers that are on SP3 are on patch 9 at the moment. We've done the patch 9, and then we've got a few that are rolling. Those that are on SP4, we go out on either patch 2 or now, we've been going out on patch 4. The biggest things we run into is like 3/4 of your customers run great on a service pack, and on a patch, everything works great. And then you come across your last customer that, everybody else has run great on this patch, and then they find the one bug that SAP has now flagged that no other customer has found, that all of a sudden crashes their systems. That is completely stable on every other environment, every other customer's environment. So there's always the one-off that we have to watch for. But yeah, and so it's hard to always say this patch is going to work for every customer and it's going to be the stable patch. So it's very hard to recommend that because, there's always that one customer. But otherwise, yeah, SP9 has so far has been the one at the Service Pack 3 level, and at least SP2, the SP4, SP3, the patch 3 and Service Pack 4 really was kind of in between, but yeah, SP2, then patch 2 and patch 4 and Service Pack 4 has been good. Sorry about all that.
We got
easy for you to say.
And JF, what do you hear from customers?
I can only concur. I mean, it's various stories. Some people are very happy with some levels that we know are not very stable, but they just happen not to tickle the dragon, and everything goes fine. So yeah, it's really very, very varied. I cannot point out, something that is particularly good. I mean, typically the later the fix back, the better. But yeah, there's no big trap out there for that is valid for everybody.
The biggest thing is,
yeah, good.
so the biggest thing is looking at what you're running now, looking at what's being released or what has been released, and looking at the release notes for those releases to see, hey, is anything in this release note, especially some of them could be 100 fixes in a patch. Looking at any of these seem to be any issues we might be looking at right now or anything that might be released, and then possibly planning out something for that. So that's what it comes down to a lot of times.
And Jeff, I mean, look, I think we've got like over 500 customers, and I feel on the conversation we had, usually it's really right now, it is really like 4.3 SP9. I feel that is really the most stable, and I think the most comfortable. I feel for most of. So.
Yeah, 4.2 SP9. That's and it's actually where we see. Yeah. It's actually where we see the majority of our customers anyway. So yeah, no major issues on that one.
Hey, I see a question from Gassan who's asking, is PC cheaper or more expensive? So what are your feedback on that in general? For an average customer, do you feel that there is a cost difference from PCE or not?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from what we're seeing, I mean, PCE tends to be a bit more expensive. There's also a minimum entry point too. There's some minimum user counts, so a lot of clients aren't even going to qualify for PCE.
And I would concur with you. We would see the same thing, and also it depends very much how the company is also structured today. So probably in the case of Gassan there, like knowing Gassan, actually, I know he's actually fairly capable, and there he's probably better off too, in my opinion, to manage that on his own for Bob J. So
mainly it makes, from my perspective, it mainly makes sense if you're going to RISE with S4 HANA and you're letting SAP kind of run everything, then it makes sense to probably roll Bob J in as part of that. But yeah, otherwise most clients I think are going to be better off on just on their own hyperscaler.
Hey, I see as well, Kevin is mentioning like he's in 4.3 SP4 past 3, so I'd actually be curious to know how that is going for him. So because yeah, we don't have that many customers that are to that level right now, because we've seen a lot of customers initially went to the first 4.3 SP4 and the taste was not that good, so I'm actually curious to get some feedback on that. And then Lewis is asking for PC, what about Tomcat and for HTTPS upgrades? How does that work for PCE?
So you really just have to schedule that. We've been down that route before with PCE. And you just have to, that always comes up on the security scans, right? So that you're behind on Tomcat versions. So you just schedule with PCE to get that updated. That's pretty straightforward.
We got a question from Catherine. Is IDT backwards compatible? We have 4.2 on servers and need to install 4.3 on our VDI image. Any comments on that?
That is actually a good question. IDT itself is not the question. Are the universes backwards compatible? I think they are, but I would not confirm it without testing. But I think I remember I tried it that way.
Isn't isn't there a security issue though? What is it? 4.3 SP3 patch or uh Service Pack 2? Like you couldn't go backwards. The security has changed.
They increased the crypto level on it, yes, because all the libraries changed behind the scenes too.
Yeah, so
True.
Yeah.
there's a inflection point there where you might be able to get away with it, but after that, I don't think so.
You're right.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. That's yeah, you're right.
So and even at that point, there is a semi-backwards compatibility connecting back to like 4.2 SP9, but before that, you can't go back before that. So, and even that's kind of touchy at times too.
Yeah.
We do that with SDK. We have some of the SDK stuff that does that.
Yeah. Yeah. We're painfully aware of that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. We've got a comment from Jack. I don't know if you have the answer, but OData is notoriously slow for write and read. Can someone address any info about utilizing OData from size limits or from performance? And I'm not familiar with that one. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, but I'm not.
Sorry. No.
No. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Jack. So we do not have the answer on that. Catherine, by the way, mentions that she is in actually SP8. We got a question from Gary that was from earlier. What about BI 2025 backup? We do whole system backup, but in terms of restore, the most often thing is some individual user misdeleted all his own stuff, or the admin misdeleted one user's accounts. So the restore is most often the individual account. In BI 2025 has individual account backup. So can we do quick restore from individual backup or any method with quick restore from entire backup? Any automatic backup function can be used daily, weekly, etc. JF, any answer on that?
Well, the short answer is I've not heard Gregory mention anything on that level that I'm aware of. But of course, you know what I'm going to say next, right? I mean, 360 plus is there for you, and it does exactly what you're asking for. So
Yeah, and there it's incremental. So
yeah.
Yep. I'm not aware of it, any kind of the backup changing between 4.3 and 2025. Because really, I mean, the infrastructure underneath of it, like even Gregory had mentioned himself, is really 4.4. So it's
Exactly. Still the same code base. So yeah, I don't expect to see anything in that respect. But again, we have a solution. So if you want to talk to us, that's definitely something we can demo for you.
yeah, and yeah, that's one of the advantage of a 360 because it's incremental, so you can roll back at the object level. And this is one of the reasons why it's popular, and we're talking about cloud as well. Having a VM copy is not a backup strategy, so that you know, because if something is wrong, well, your VM very likely is going to be wrong, and you're stuck. So I see you, KJ, like you were moving your head. Would you
Oh
agree?
no, I was agreeing. Backing up the VM is not a good strategy in terms of from a restore perspective. So yeah, leveraging Plus it's definitely become a boon in terms of the one-off. Oops, somebody deleted something, and instead of trying to restore everything to another environment, it just makes life a lot easier from an administration perspective. No question.
Yeah, and especially overwriting something valuable.
Yep.
You don't even have a recycle bin in that case. So. Yep.
Nathan, any comments on that?
no, I mean, that's exactly, I mean, VM snapshots are good from a perspective of the OS being corrupted or something happening at a level higher than business objects. But yeah, in terms of actual backups, in terms of content, no, something in terms of Wiiisdom 360 plus, or you want database files FRS backups or beer backups. that kind of, you want something at a level that's going to actually back up the content, not just the overall OS structure, for sure.
Great. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next session. KJ, thank you very much. We've got a couple more sessions today. So the next session will be about converting multi-source UNX to single source, including multi-connections, because as you know, with the BI 2025, of course, you need to go to UNX. But in the event you've already converted and then you selected whether it's single source or multi-source, actually, this is going to be a serious issue. Then the following session after that will be with Nathan Truan, where we'll be talking about DataSphere. So there's been a lot of questions about DataSphere. So Nathan is going to be here to talk about his experience. And then finally, we'll have 2 sessions about how to build Webbies. It's going to be a very basic session for new people to Bobj, and then the same session about building a universe. JF, would you mind sharing your screen?